Hi Cindy, Ellie Roberts here. I'm going to be delivering our group's project under the article that we found in the Psychi Journal called Relationship Between Art Activities and Older Adult Depression. Johansson wanted to evaluate the relationship between art therapy programs and symptoms of depression among older adults. They wanted to know if participation in art activities with children would help decrease geriatric depression. Inspiration came from Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, suggesting that people in their old age need to maintain a connection with younger generations to stimulate creativity and involvement in society and build self-esteem. Erikson also believed in the last stage of psychosocial development that wisdom was the basic strength of old age. Previous research looked at non-pharmaceutical interventions like garden walks and therapy groups, but this article involved the application of intergenerational art activities. The null hypothesis of the current research study was that no correlation would be found between depressive symptomology and participation in art classes. The research hypothesis was that reports of depression would be significantly associated with participation in art classes. Specifically, lower scores of depression were expected to correlate with higher attendance in art classes. The independent variables were measured under three conditions: a control group that did not participate in art classes, a group that participated in adult-only art classes, and another group that participated in intergenerational art classes with children. The dependent variable was depressive symptomology as measured by the Geriatric Depression Scale, the GDS for short. The first method they used was a survey given to adults ages 65 and older. Initially, they wanted a sample of 75, but ended up with only 52. And with the small sample size, the study was unable to tell if older adults reported being less depressed when they do art projects with kids or when they do art projects with peers their own age. Of the 11 participants in the intergenerational art group, 9 reported having taken classes with older adults in the last 12 months. So only 2 participants accounted for a true third condition. On top of that, the researchers chose to look at only one residential senior center in Seattle, because it was the only one that hosted regular intergenerational art classes. The survey questions asked about age, sex, and the target independent variables related to art participation, frequency, and duration, like when did they start taking art classes and how many art classes have they attended in the last 12 months. To assess the dependent variable, which was depressive symptomology, the survey incorporated the Geriatric Depression Scale, which is a 15-question form that takes about 6 minutes to administer and is found to be an effective screening instrument for geriatric depression. The responses were placed on a scale from 0 to 15, where a score of 5 points or higher suggested depression. The mean scores for each condition were then calculated in the table we see in the top left. The mean GDS score for the intergenerational art group was lower than the no art group. What I also noticed was that the average score for the no art condition was lower than 5. Did the GDS measure what it was supposed to be measuring, or is the research suggesting that those in the no art group do not exhibit signs of depression? Since the study was designed to see if one condition was more effective than the other 2 conditions, they used a one-way ANOVA statistical test to observe the mean differences between conditions to see if there was any real significance. Looking at the degrees of freedom, I used the F table to determine how extreme the F ratio had to be in order to reject the null hypothesis. The cutoff score was 3.21. Since the study's F score was 4.54 at the 0.003 level of significance, that indicated the analysis demonstrated an overall significant impact on depressive symptomology. Using the analysis for variance, the study created a large effect size, 0.21, which is rare in most psychology research. It could be accounted for power and sample size. In order to see if intergenerational art participation would significantly lower GDS scores compared to the adult art or no art conditions, Table 2 shows the post hoc Tukey test results, which outline the between-group comparisons. The power isn't coming from the intergenerational art group. The mean difference in scores showed only marginal significance from the no art group because the significance level was p equals 0.07. So that is more than 0.05. It's more than 0.05 level of significance. The research hypothesis was supported, and the third method for analysis can also prove it. Supported, I'm sorry. If it looked at the correlation, it reported GDS scores and duration of art class participation. When did they start taking art classes, and how does that affect depression scores within groups? There was a negative correlation between the two variables found, suggesting that the longer older adults had spent engaging in art activities, the less reports of depressive symptoms. Two solid critiques I'll point out have to do with the sampling methods and the use of the geriatric depression scale. Susan Johansson pulled from her college town and only found one geriatric home that suited her study. So I understand that time and expense may have prevented sampling outside of Seattle, but I think it limits the results. Why not contact every institution that conducts intergenerational art classes, and if they're too far away, I personally would do telephone or mail-in surveys. We're talking about social infrastructure here, and it needs to be taken more seriously. As for the GDS, it was developed in 1986 and asks weird closed-ended questions like, do you feel pretty worthless the way you are now? And do you feel that you have more problems with memory than most? It just needs to be revised, or I won't use it when I do further research on art therapy programs. Instead, I'll develop my own Likert type scale and ask new questions that are straight to the point, including something that gets at like if they were being suggested or kind of forced to attend the art classes against their own volition. And that wraps up our presentation, and thank you for listening. Bye, Cindy.